So I'm looking here at naming alkanes and alkenes, and what I suggest you do is look at the GCSE Bitesize website. The link's on here, and this is the page about crude oil, because if you remember we looked at crude oil and how crude oil is a mixture of hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons, if you remember the definition, is that they are molecules, compounds that contain hydrogen and carbon only, and that only is a very important part of it. Now, if the hydrocarbon contains only single bonds, then we call them alkanes. There's a general formula here that's worth looking at. Basically what we're saying is there's twice as many hydrogens as there are carbons. So there's twice as many hydrogens as carbon plus another 2. And this will become important later when we look at the difference between alkanes and alkenes. So the other thing that we said is this is almost like learning a new language. A few of you commented on it. So it is a scientific language thing. These are alkanes, and depending on what they look like, we give them a different name. But the names are systematic. We can work out what the names are by looking at how they're made up. So here we look at the structure of alkanes, and here you've got methane. Methane is what we use as a fuel in the Bunsen burner. It's what comes out of the gas taps. Now this has 1 carbon and 4 hydrogens. So there's our carbon and here's our hydrogens around it. Remember that the carbon always has to be attached to 4 different things, or not 4 things, it has to have 4 bonds attached to it. So this one's got 4 hydrogens attached to it, carbon in the middle, 4 hydrogens around it. It's CH4. Ethane has 2 carbons. Each of these carbons are attached to 4 things, so 4 bonds around each carbon. But this carbon here is attached to a carbon and then 3 hydrogens, so 4 things. This carbon also has 4 bonds around it, 3 hydrogens and 1 carbon. So the formula is C2, there's 2 carbons, and H6. So there's 6 hydrogens, and if we look at our general formula here, that's what we're expecting. Cn, so the N is 2, 2 N's, that's 4 plus 2, so C2H6. Here we go. If there are 3 carbons, C3H8, propane. Now the naming, we basically have a beginning and an ending, and if it's an alkane it will always end with ane. If it has 1 carbon it will always begin with meth, so methane. 2 carbons, eth. 3 carbons, prop. 4 carbons, bute. So the meth, eth, prop, bute stays the same. And if we've got 4 carbons, we just make sure that every single carbon has 4 bonds, 4 things attached to it, whether it's hydrogens or carbons, and they're all single bonds. Now the other page that you could look at is also on GCSE Bitesize. We need to move this over. So here we have alkenes. Now alkenes are also hydrocarbons. They're hydrocarbons because they only contain double bonds. But these have just double the number of hydrogens as they had carbons. So we don't have the extra 2. So the general formula is CnH2n. And all that means is that if we have 2 carbons, we have 4 hydrogens. If we have 3 carbons, we double it, we have 6 hydrogens, and so on. And the reason that we have fewer hydrogens than we do with the alkanes is because this time we have a double bond. So instead of the carbon being joined 4 times with single bonds to 4 different things, one of those bonds is another bond to the carbon. 2 of these 2 bonds are between these 2 carbons here. We have a double bond. So we haven't got enough bonds there to add 2 more hydrogens on. But the naming is the same. If we have 2 carbons, like before, it's an eth. If we have 3 carbons, it's prop. And if we have 4 carbons, it's bute. Don't worry about this 1 here for the moment. So the beginning is the same, the ending is different. If it's an alkene, it ends in ene. So ethene, propene, butene. And the butene looks like this. It has a double bond here. So you should be able to tell me, because before when we looked at the alkanes we said that 1 carbon starts with meth. We had methane. It was an alkane called methane because it had 1 carbon. Why do we not have an alkene that also starts with meth? Why is there no methene? You should be able to tell me that in the next lesson.